Welcome back and welcome to my favorite place in the world, Ou Trekpad, and probably now my favorite bakkie. By now you'd have seen that very recently I drove the 2021 Pajero Sport, which you can say the Pajero Sport is based on this, or this is based on the Pajero Sport, but the Pajero Sport is based on this. And one thing I really like is that they look exactly the same. If you look at Hilux and Fortuner, don't look the same. Everest and Ranger to a degree, they look the same. But I really like this front end, and for that reason I really like that it's the same on both cars. Under the bonnet you've got the familiar 2.4 litre diesel Myvec, 133 kilowatts, 430 Newton meters. If you've watched my Pajero video, you know that this is probably my favorite gearbox. The Ranger 10-speed comes close. That's one whistling Fortuner. The Ranger 10-speed comes close, but this is just a bit more sure of itself. The Ranger, especially in low range, tends to hunt gears, which is not fun. I mean, you're doing 40 k's an hour and you're in 9th gear. That's just too much. This vehicle is the top of the range, 4x4 extreme. So formalities out of the way, let's get this on the road. So let's start off with a with a banger. Nice steep left-hander up the hill. That was actually, come to think of it, way too easy. So if you haven't watched the Pajero Sport video, don't go watch it now. Finish this, go watch it later. The link will be in the description. We've covered that vehicle twice now, and every single time I drive it, I am thoroughly impressed at how good they are. But I absolutely adore Mitsubishi products. That was a bad one. I always just look at its main competitors, you know, the Isuzu, the Hilux, the Ranger, the Navara. Each has their own advantages, strengths, but I think you need to look at, I think that's the case of mine. I'm not saying you should, because you probably hopefully do it. You should look at what offers the best value for money and the best complete package, and this looks interesting. So for now we're just cruising, just doing like a little Jeep track, just to see how the suspension feels. It is a bit firm, but it's not loaded up in the back, there's no weight, but it is a bit firmer than you would probably expect, but it's similar to the Hilux, which I've always said is a bit firm. But again, no weight in the back, so I can't really make a definitive statement that, you know, it is firmer. The firmer suspension has a benefit of it handling a lot better at speed on paved roads. It's got more steering feel than the Hilux and the Ranger. I definitely feel more feedback through the steering, which, I mean, it's not an absolute deal breaker if you don't have that feedback, but it's just nice to know that, you know, you can feel what's going on if you really are so inclined. In terms of the interior, I mean, it's obviously it's very similar to the Pajero Sport, with the addition of the Sony head unit, which I mentioned earlier. It features Apple CarPlay, which is nice. That's always a good feature to have. But I have to admit, like, it's relatively comfortable. Materials are extremely high quality, I will admit. I love the way this interior feels. It's got a different gauge cluster to the Pajero Sport. That's something to note. It's a lot more sporty. Funny enough, even though the Pajero Sport is the sporty one. The gauges have like a bit of a faux carbon fiber finish, which looks quite nice, but it doesn't look tacky. It's not like in your face. You can look at the clip. It looks nice, I must say. Nice little touch. Like, you have to like look for it to see it, which is quite cool. Obviously, sand is not the most challenging surface. Mud takes that crown without a doubt, but it has its own challenges, and one of the reasons why I like Ou Trekpad is it's constantly changing. People come and no fault of their own sometimes. There's new ruts. Every time you do a run in sand, it's different. Unless you're going up a dune, and every time you do it, you move like 10 meters on. Here, you don't have those options. You have one path to take up, and that's it. And that's why it took us 4 attempts for the runs with Beep to get up quite a simple but quite rutted little incline, but we eventually got him up. I'm not pulling him, it's his problem. And it's now also started to rain. You can see by the drops. That's fresh rain drops, it's not messing around in the water hole drops. Didn't do that at all. And this also relates back to the Sport and the gearbox. Like I mentioned, it's probably one of my favorite gearboxes. It responds when you tell it to. It's the only, and this is a selling point for the Triton that no other Bakkie has, it's the only one with column mounted paddle shifters. Now there are two schools of thought. You either love it or you don't. It depends on the situation. When you're off-roading, your hands tend to move a lot, depending on what terrain you're on, if you're doing something a bit more technical. So it is a nuisance that the gear lever isn't where your hands are, but you always know where the gear lever is, which is quite nice. I mean, I definitely prefer it that way. It takes some getting used to, without a doubt, but just in general I prefer the way, or the position of column mounted shifters. And like in the SUV world, there are other SUVs that have column mounted paddle shifters, but in the Bakkie world this is the only one. So if you prefer your vehicles with column mounted paddles, this is pretty much your only option, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because this is a excellent Bakkie. That's looking ominous, I think is the right word, over there. So this vehicle is fitted with Mitsubishi's Super Select 2 4x4 system. It might sound like I'm showing favoritism towards this vehicle or this brand, but it is quite a decent 4x4 system. I've got traction control off now, maybe I'll turn that on. Just have it. But earlier when we were playing around a bit, the traction control kicked in when it needed to. I found that it was the same with the Pajero Sport when I took it to Gearbox, which is gravel and loose rocks. Yeah, in sand it tends to interfere a bit quicker. It can, but that's true of all vehicles. It can sometimes bog the vehicle down, where I found it at one point where I was needing just that extra second or split second or half a second of power, and it just bogged down, which is not ideal. So I not got stuck, but the vehicle came to a stop, but luckily I could just reverse out. And I have to admit, it hasn't been, every time I've got stuck, the vehicle was able to free itself again, either by going backwards or just, as I said, bumping. Just if you're in sand, just rolling onto the sand behind the wheel and just taking that momentum. Obviously it helps a bit if you clear out the sand in front of it. We had to do that with the other vehicle because he doesn't have diff lock, so any ruts, just the wheels just spin. But anyway, it's not about that vehicle, it's about this one. That did not sound good, it sounded expensive. Let's just see what happens. See, that's what happens when diff lock isn't on. And now it kicks in. Okay, let's see if I can recover this. See, that's what happens when diff lock is on. You can do stuff. Oh, there's a nice bit of rear wheel lift there. Hey, when do you come loose? Go back. Stay there. Overall impressions, I absolutely adore this vehicle. bit aggressive. I absolutely adore it. I think it's very impressive considering the price. And here is, I think, what this vehicle's piece de resistance is. It's for the top of a range model with all the toys. It's 699,240 rand, which I think is extremely good value for money considering the build quality. I think you're buying something different as well, especially in terms of styling. And with that, and with the rain coming again, although I've got my window open, my time with this car is coming to an end. I've given it a thorough workout here. It might not look like it as always, but I am seriously impressed. Go take one for a test drive. That's all I'm going to say. Go take one for a test drive. Even if you are a current owner of one of its competitors, or if you've got a previous gen Triton, definitely go take one for a test drive. There's no harm in having aspirations. I think that this is a brilliant car for the money. It's the same as a 2.4 Hilux. Similar power, as I mentioned, 133 kilowatts, 430 newton meters. But this to me just feels like a nicer vehicle compared to the 2.4 Hilux Raider. Oh yeah, is it Raider now? Raider, SRX, SR. It feels better than the equivalent Hilux and Ranger, and that is high praise, because those two are always swapping positions for being the best selling vehicles in the class. So go take one for a test drive. Go tell your friends to go take one for a test drive. Remember to go check out our Pajero Sport video as well to see what the SUV version, or what the SUV is like. It's shockingly similar, but also quite different. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions about the vehicle, comment below and we will get back to you. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to our newsletter as well. That's where we send out almost weekly the latest car reviews, tech reviews, gear reviews, trail reviews. My colleague is doing a trip up to Mossel Bay now this week in this, so keep your eyes out for that as well. I think that's going to be very nice. Follow our social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, obviously YouTube. You're watching YouTube, so you might as well, you're watching the video, so you might as well just press the subscribe button. Just saying. But otherwise, from the SA4x4 team, thank you very much for watching. We've got some exciting content coming up, so stay tuned and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.